Glad you stayed with us. Stocks closed flat yesterday as investors avoided carrying positions over the weekend in the absence of triggers amid lack of clarity over the inconclusive talks that occurred, of course, between the government of Pakistan and the International Monetary Fund. What Finance Minister Asad Umar conveyed in Parliament earlier was the bare minimum, as the government and the opposition have drifted into arguments over unrelated issues. Hence, at the close of trading, the Karachi Stock Exchange 100 index closed down by 4.75 points to end the day at 40,869.28 points. Moreover, traders were expecting some recovery after the heavy fall of the index by as much as 1.32% on Thursday. However, there was nothing to boost investor sentiments. On the contrary, panic gripped the market as traders were glued to their television screens, watching the militant attack on the Chinese consulate in Karachi and the terrorist attack in Aurangzeb that negatively impacted investor sentiments and resulted in the index plunging to the intraday low by losing as many as 219 points before recovery took place in the second session of the day. Furthermore, there were several other disconcerting factors, like the onset of rollover week for futures contracts from Monday, while Morgan Stanley Capital International related outflows from passive funds are also due in the upcoming week for the rebalancing and expectations of another rate hike, which is expected in the next monetary policy to woo potential investors. Therefore, the traded value dipped by 13% to 7.08 billion rupees. While exploration and production sector were the main laggards, giving away 94 points as international oil prices scaled down further during the day. On the other hand, other sectors that lost value included fertilizers, which were lower by 45 points, oil and gas marketing companies by 23 points, and tobacco and automobile sector by 13 and 12 points respectively. Meanwhile, key gainers of the day included the cement sector that ran ahead, contributing 111 points, and major banks followed with gains of 46 points on anticipation of policy rate rise. However, major contribution to the downside came from Pakistan Petroleum, Pakistan Oil Fields, the Oil and Gas Development Company, Engro Fertilizer, and Pakistan State Oil. Now, to talk more about the weekly performance of the Pakistan Stock Exchange and certainly in particular the uncertainty that still seems to adversely affect the market, we have with our guest the Chief Executive Officer of Askari Securities, Mr. Faheem Sardar, who joins us on the telephone. Faheem Saab, Assalamu alaikum, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Walaikum salam ji. Thank you for having me.
How do you assess the overall performance of the Pakistan Stock Exchange yesterday? Give us your views on that.
I think, if you permit me, I'd like to broaden it to the whole week, not just yesterday. It's been a little shaky in the sense that we're waiting for some good information to come out, good macro information to come out. As you very, I think, lucidly have summed up most of the happenings, such as IMF, terrorism, internal politics, and general uncertainty. These things have contributed to a certain level of uncertainty in the market, which sort of pushes away investors. Now, I mean, as you would know, everybody needs something solid to base their thoughts and their projections on. This is what we're waiting for right now. We got some good news from Saudi Arabia, we got some good news from China, but we're still waiting for the details of the Chinese transactions. But we're just not sure about IMF, because on one hand we heard that talks were inconclusive, but I also heard that the talks were, let's say, paused. That doesn't mean that they were inconclusive. That means everybody's going back to their drawing boards to understand what is going on. But what is definitely happening is that information is not being properly managed, processed, and brought to the public, which itself lends weight to the uncertainty that I'm talking about.
Right. Now, the lack of clarity, Faheem Saab, that continues to affect the stock markets in the country. Sure. Now, how do we alleviate that sense of uncertainty, the lack of clarity, so that the stock market can recover? Because, as you know, if there's one thing investors hate, it's uncertainty. Now, how do we get rid of that? Because now the talks for right now with the IMF, of course, they are over, and it seems to me that for the next couple of months, there's not going to be any progress as far as the the bailout package is concerned from the IMF. So, what do you recommend if you were advising the Prime Minister on this? How do we get rid of the uncertainty, the lack of clarity, so that the stock markets in the country, the investors, can take heart? What do we do?
Sure. I think if I had the opportunity to give some advice, I would be saying, or I would say that, look, regularly talk to the people, talk to the investors. Yeah, okay, let me demonstrate. If you remember, like a month ago, the government and especially the Ministry of Finance were actively talking to the investors, to the PSX, to the institutions. What happened? The market started to breathe again. I'm not going to say it started to flourish. I'm just going to use the word breathe. And we know that resilience is there.
Right.
But as you very rightly have said, clarity is the word. If there's a lack of clarity, that clarity has to be brought in through proper talk, through proper display of facts. I mean, there are some good facts that are arising in the country. Every country has issues. Every country has problems. I mean, come on. I mean, there's always a balance that one has to draw. But
sure,
this is the job of the government, especially here in the Ministry of Finance, to sort of deal with this thing with a slight war footing attitude rather than something that's on the back burner.
Right. Right. Now, how do you assess the overall weekly performance of the Pakistan Stock Exchange? Has this been a better week than before, especially for certain sectors? It's certainly this uncertainty does prevail, but how do you look at it? Are you as pessimistic as a lot of other analysts?
I'm cautious, but I'm also optimistic.
Okay.
Cautiously optimistic, if I dare say. Now, the fact of the matter is, for the past 3 weeks, we've experienced a decrease in volumes. From, let's say, 3 weeks ago, we had an average of 300 plus million shares being traded per day, which has now slipped below 200 million. So there is a thinning out of volume, which is not healthy. That's something that we have to be very cautious about. But a market going up and a market going down are signs of a healthy market. A market going continuously up, a market going continuously down are signs of something wrong.
Okay.
So if it goes up or down, I'm not too worried about that. What I'm worried about, what I'm cautious about, is the thinning out of volume. So to sort of re-answer your question, I'm not pessimistic at all. I'm just like, we have to talk about the positives in the right way, not in any exaggerated manner. Just like we must not talk about negative things in an exaggerated manner. Just balance is the word. We just need a little more informational balance, which I think would help bring some kind of sanity to the whole situation.
Okay. Now, I wanted to ask you about the potential bailout package from the International Monetary Fund. If that does not happen, if we don't get a bailout package from the International Monetary Fund, because that, it seems to me, is a possibility. I don't know how likely it is, but that's certainly a possibility that we may not get it, or if we get it, they may offer it on terms that are not acceptable to the Pakistan government. If we can't get a bailout package from the International Monetary Fund that the government seems to be counting on heavily, what happens? How do you see the economy in that particular event?
Okay, I mean, if that happens, then we are in a bit of a crunch then. I mean, we have to then look for alternatives. And do we have alternatives? Yes, we do have alternatives. There are certain, I've said this for the past 3 years, I've been saying this on television and radio, that we have other options as well. We have other friends that we can talk to. Every country needs, at some point, some fiscal help, so it doesn't matter if we ask for help. The point is how we ask for it and what we do with it. Going to the IMF is primarily, at least from what I've been able to gather and understand, is because we want to get a letter of comfort from IMF. We need that letter so that we can go to other institutions if need be. And we just want, from what I understand, we just want a small portion from IMF now, because having gone to the Chinese and to the Saudis, that was meant to decrease the requirement from IMF. Now, if my estimates are correct, Pakistan can draw approximately 12.5 to 13 billion dollars from the IMF. We have a right on that. However, I don't think Pakistan has any interest in drawing even close to 10 billion. We just want, I think, maybe 1 or 2, and that's it, so that we get the letter of comfort, we get things back on track. And I think I have a suspicion, and a positive suspicion, that I don't think the IMF can back out so easily.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's actually the other way around, I think.
Okay, okay. So you think that the bailout package will eventually go through? And if so, how much would be the amount? Analysts are speculating an amount in the range of $6 to $8 billion.
I would not totally agree with that figure, because according to me, it's going to be somewhere between 1.5 to 3 billion.
Okay.
Because we already have the funds arranged from other sources,
right.
And it is very clear that in the very near future we're going to be getting some inflows. Now, how we get them, to what extent we get them, that's the only question. But something will come in, and that's based on many of the activities that are going on in the country.
Okay.
But I would just very, very quickly, I just want to say that IMF cannot allow Pakistan to get into that corner, because if it does, the international system will become destabilized.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because so you're saying something in the range of 1.5 to say $3 billion, which would not only, I would presume, have strings attached that are not too stringent for Pakistan. The conditions won't be as harsh, and at the same time we'll be able to obtain the letter of credit so that we can go to other institutions like, say, the Asian Development Bank and the Islamic Development Bank and all that. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly how I see it.
Okay. Thank you, Faheem Sardar. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
That was Faheem Sardar, the Chief Executive Officer of Askari Securities, analyzing the economic situation as it stands right now. The last point that Faheem Sardar mentioned regarding the letter of credit, that's absolutely critical, because if we don't have that letter of credit, the bailout package from the International Monetary Fund, it is virtually impossible for Pakistan to go to the other lending institutions like the Asian Development Bank and expect them to extend a loan to us. So in that sense, it's very important. And at the same time, as he pointed out, the amount of the bailout package has to be low. It can't be too high, because that will certainly entail harsh conditions for the Pakistani nation, which this government does not want, and rightly so. An amount that's in the range of $1 to $3 billion, as Faheem Sardar pointed out, that would not have conditions that would be too harsh, and that will certainly enable Pakistan to obtain the letter of credit for future loans from other financial institutions. We will now go to a break. When we come back, we will have discussion and analysis on another critical current affairs topic of the day. Stay with us. We'll be right back.